The stars. The NBA has always been about the stars, and we know that, but there's something really strange that's been happening recently. Let me show you. Today, there's Sirius Shed. There's the supergiant, Giannis Majoris. The blue supergiant, Jokic R136A1. The new binary star, the Luka 2377.
He finds Luka to beat the clock.
Even new potential stars like the Wemby Nova. These stars have always been more massive than their orbiting systems, but look a little bit closer, and you might see something that is defying tradition. The best teams,
Primary ignition.
they don't really pass the ball. The top 4 teams in the NBA this season, they're in the bottom 7 for passing, and it doesn't end there. If we look at the bottom third in terms of passes made, 9 of the 10 teams are playoff teams. And it's not just playoff teams. The league as a whole, they're sharing the ball less and less. If we go back just 10 years ago, there was one team that was passing the ball less than 270 times in a game. Today, there are 15. There's a reason for this. Over the past decade or so, a highly complex theory has taken hold of the hoops universe. Something so complex that I brought in an astrophysicist to help us peasants understand.
They were letting the dude cook.
Heliocentrism. We've heard of this, but are we nearing a point of singularity? Have we eclipsed the event horizon? Was everything our forefathers taught us about the way the game should be played wrong? Is being selfish unselfish? To understand this, we must head back in time. Long, long ago, in a distant town far, far away, a secret basketball operation took place in the Rio Grande Valley. At the time, the Vipers were a standard D-League team, but with the hiring of a new front office executive, their style began to defy basketball tradition. Gone were the old ways of ball movement, balance in the mid-range. The Vipers squad stripped offensive skill to LA Fitness levels. They led the league in three-pointers, attempted 4 straight seasons, a ruthless approach.
Takes the long two. Misses everything.
Orchestrated by the Sith Lord of statistics, Daryl Morey. Armed with 2 D-League titles and a large enough sample size, Morey sought NBA power. A neglected but powerful protege, James Harden. It didn't take long to see the result.
And the comeback is complete.
With Harden at the helm, the Rockets won more and more games, with more and more isolation in threes. Morey went further. He hired a speed-crazed general and brought in another centerpiece? The league saw this as heresy. 2 ball-dominant guards could never coexist, but
how specifically do you envision this pairing working since they're both point guards?
Morey persisted.
We've got James Harden in his prime. We got Chris Paul in his prime.
This seemingly crowded backcourt worked. The Rockets would finish the regular season number 1 in the NBA, and in the playoffs they would do the unthinkable, a 3-2 series lead against the Golden Boys, the unbeatable.
A little shimmy answer.
But as fate would have it,
But he is hurt right now.
Paul would injure his hamstring, missing the final 2, and the Rockets would go on to have a historically bad Game 7. How would we think of Harden if the Rockets had made a few more threes? If Paul was healthy and maybe they had won that series? That is left up for debate. But one thing was certain. Basketball was no longer an art. It was an equation. And today, just a few years later, Maury's Houston teams look normal. To visualize this, we need a stat that quantifies the mass of these stars today versus the stars of yesterday, something that is percentage-based to account for the change in pace. Since there aren't a lot of traditional stats for playmaking, we need to get a little more advanced. Some look to usage rate, but this feels suboptimal because, well, there are several definitions, and many of these definitions don't include assists. In my opinion, offensive load, created by Ben Taylor, is the best measurement. In Harden's MVP season, there were 4 players carrying an offensive load of 50 or more. Today, there are 12. Death to the mid-range, death to the post-up, death to ball movement? This last one feels too far. The Old Republic would exemplify the other Texas team, the fast-moving 2014 Spurs that shared the rock, but more and more teams look like the Rockets.
Oh, a deep one. He buries it.
Not only is passing down, but league-wide isolation is trending up, even with the historic Harden outlier seasons with the Rockets about 8 years ago. And it's often deceiving. Something I didn't expect, the current Celtics team, praised for their collective prowess and unselfishness.
How about the ball movement? Look at the ball movement. Great ball movement here. Winds up.
They're second in isolation plays this year. Again. And they shoot more threes than anyone. Again. And again, they are near the bottom in passing. Is this the way the game ought to be played? Are well-rounded, ball-moving teams like the Spurs or the 2004 Pistons fading into the night sky? The role players have been commoditized, and the economics further the belief in this commoditization more than any other major sport. The stars are the true movers, the gravity that pulls an elusive championship within reach. But that is what I want to challenge here. One way to view evolution is through diversity. Imagine for a moment a group of clones travel through the space-time continuum with some food, water, and a basketball. They arrive on a different planet, and over the last 100 years, they play the game as their national sport.
Stand down. Disarm yourself. Surrender while you can. All right.
What would their game look like? Their offensive schemes, their tendencies? How would their world and game have evolved?
The closest thing we have to this, Europe. About 100 years ago, basketball was introduced to Europe, and the game has evolved noticeably different. And we see this on the global stage.
Pass, and Ernie Gomez.
Take, for instance, the Serbia versus USA game. Before the tournament began, I did a video on why I thought Serbia was the biggest threat to upsetting the Americans. Their style somewhat contrasting a loaded Team USA squad. And in the semifinal, that difference was on full display. I rewatched the game recently, and I counted a very simple measure: passing. The Americans made 141 successful passes. The Serbians, nearly 100 more. However, some may view this as a bimodal answer. Did the Americans win the game? Yes, therefore our system must be working. But this has some glaring issues. Serbia has less people than the state of Washington. Largely because of that, talent.
Comparing career earnings, the Americans have made $4.7 billion. Serbia about 1/15 of that.
Point being, the market, and well, probably just your eyeballs, would suggest that Team USA has a far greater collection of talent, and therefore should be winning by much larger margins. But that didn't really happen.
Abramovich, rather, into the path of Jokic!
At one point, they were down by 17 in the second half, and they shot 50% from three. It's not like they had it off shooting them. Other skeptics might look at this and say, well, rule differences. That's why this game is close. I don't see it that way, and that's partially because I experienced it for myself playing in Spain.
Players that clearly lacked the traditional skill sets made up for it by humming the ball around the perimeter, running multiple actions and incorporating far more movement. less dribbling.
The most recent FIBA tournament highlighted this further. Team USA passed the ball the least in the tournament, and while passing should not be viewed in isolation, consider the fact that Lithuania, a team with one NBA player, beat the Americans. And while Team USA looked stagnant in that game, Lithuania more than doubled them up in ball reversals in the half court. Why don't the Americans play like this? Why don't more NBA teams play like this? Why are they so homogeneous? Well, largely because the system dictates it.
You know, it's threes or dunks or layups. You know, there's no mid-range, there's no creativity. Offensively, it's one guy with the ball.
So there are a few ways that ingenuity can take place. The first is through the players. This is maybe where I disagree with the old heads out there. Your dad, my dad, maybe even you a little bit, maybe myself upon reflection, because the NBA does just kind of look like a bunch of dudes jacking up threes, and that doesn't look very creative. But all that's really happened, long twos have been replaced by threes. We still have relatively the same percentage of jump shots taken in a game. And outside of shooting, players are more skilled than ever.
Behind the back. Terrence Ross serving for the win. What a block from Giannis.
Jokic showing the pump fake.
Oh, what a play.
Garland behind his head.
Mobley. Harden step back. Puts up the three. Got hit. Shot's good.
Still unsure if players are more creative?
I can't explain what he just did. He wrapped it around from his right hand to his right hand. I've never seen that in all my days.
So to me, players are undeniably more creative than ever before. Now, the second possible realm of ingenuity, the front office. NBA front offices defer and function in a variety of ways today. Some are trading for the future. Others are all in on win now, paying massive luxury tax bills. There are more multi-team deals than ever, and analytics is playing a bigger role than ever. It has gotten creative and complex, but perhaps as a byproduct, it is our third element, coaching, where we see a true lack of ingenuity.
As a coach in the NBA now, you have no authority whatsoever. Basically, if players say, well, I don't want to play with that guy, I want this guy on my team, you got the president of basketball operation or the GM or the owner going to get that player.
As the former coach Scott highlighted, most NBA coaches don't have authority.
Jason Kidd was recently blindsided by management's decision to trade his best player.
You didn't know about it until basically it was happening?
Yeah, the 11th hour.
NBA front offices are kind of like those parents who pick out their kids' Halloween costumes. They're not just letting them do their thing. Instead, they're overbearing. Because of this, we don't see the same schematic differences we see at the college level. Pitino's press, Boeheim's lengthy zone, Houston's Kelvin Sampson's teams, which blitz every ball screen. Yes, there are a few exceptions, Kerr and Spoelstra, but largely speaking, most NBA coaches can't implement their own system. And even players will admit this in sometimes roundabout ways.
He brought some of that college to the NBA, which don't fly.
Across the pond, far, far away, it is not the same. Although European coaches are starting to get more relatable.
Fuck you guys. What the fuck is this, man? Go shut up. Calm yourself, okay?
There's still a noticeable power dynamic difference. Unlike the NBA, most EuroLeague contracts are NFL-like. They're 1 year of guarantees, so to speak. That kind of changes things, especially when your coaches have multi-year deals. It's why, as I was writing this, Rick Pitino called the EuroLeague a carbon copy of college basketball. This coaching and cultural difference, teams are playing measurably different, not just the metric system. The average EuroLeague possession is 2 to 3 seconds longer than in the NBA. In the half court, they're moving the ball more, taking slightly longer to get their shot. Part of that is because the EuroLeague doesn't have the same star power, because, well, those guys, those outliers, they're gonna go play in the NBA where they can make more money. But it's also largely because coaches have the ability to implement their system. About a year and a half ago, I mentioned in a video that the best route for an NBA small or mid-market team was to hire a coach who would implement a system, and specifically, a system built around cutting. The most efficient play in the NBA is the cut. And even when the play type doesn't end as a cut because the player cutting doesn't receive the ball, A quality cut opens up others because you are occupying lucrative space, forcing defenders to have to respect and guard you. And watching the NBA, it kind of feels like the antithesis of this at times. Off-ball movement is rather stagnant, it's rather fixed. And I think that's because cutting, at least sacrificial above average cutting, does not feel natural. It's a very unnatural feeling to run into a pool of defenders. I thought we were supposed to stay away from those guys. And you still need a coach, even at the highest level, to drill that into your sets, your motion offense, your schemes. And I think the 2013 Warriors versus the 2014 Warriors are a prime example of this. Under Kerr, the Warriors would lead the league in cutting for 5 straight years.
Steve came in. I'm watching Steph Curry going to mixing someone. He's like, pass the ball, pass the ball. I'm like, yo. And sure enough, as we bought into the system that he was bringing to it, it always found the guys that it needed to find, which is where I learned the power of the swing pass.
One new team has taken a somewhat similar approach this year, an unexpected one. Cavs don't have Boston-like talent. They don't have a single player in the top 15 for scoring or offensive load. Most of us, I think, would say the Cavs don't have a top 10 player. And when Coach Kenny Atkinson rolled in a year ago and started implementing his system, players were, quote, averse to the changes.
I fight with the players sometimes. They want their, static space. See the puzzle sometimes when you got a lot of people going, it makes it harder.
Atkinson, importantly, was given the reins. He also didn't just settle for managing egos, like seemingly a lot of coaches do. He established a system full of off-ball movement and, importantly, cutting. Multiple players, including their star, complained, but separation of church and state maintained. Atkinson had creative schematic control. The result? Well, the Cavs don't just have the best offensive team this year.
Crunches it home.
They're on the brink of becoming the best offensive team ever.
For the sideline, Mobley with a play.
They are absolutely dicing teams up in the half court through their off-ball movement.
Back to Wade, off to Mitchell. Mitchell creeps baseline. No, looks a pass to a wide open guard.
And they lead the league on points per possession when it comes to cuts.
Dishes to LeVert.
Interestingly, this isn't the ball movement we've seen from the Popovich Spurs or the Warriors. The Cavs are second to last in passes made per game. While this isn't a European system full of passing, it is still a system, and critically, the Cavs are doing it without something that we haven't seen in a while.
Donovan Mitchell is a star, but he's not the supergiant that we've seen on championship teams of recent history. Currently, he is 17th in offensive load, and the Cavs are only 17th in spending this season. For perspective, we haven't seen an NBA team win a championship outside of the top 15 in spending since, well, the Spurs. This new era is pushing an uncomfortable truth. For the best playmakers in our galaxy, being selfish is unselfish, defying physics. As spaces increase between players, gravity has increased, but I don't think we're at a singularity or even an event horizon. We've only really had one European head coach in the NBA, and it's not like Euro-styled basketball is the only way to play, but it is the parallel professional universe we can compare things to. And, well, the Americanized version that did this, the Spurs, they were pretty successful. This could be just an era. Supergiants don't exist forever. Even stars fade, and maybe one organization will try this old but new approach, and ball movement will be back. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and take care.